Don't just stand there. Back row now. My mother's red nails tapped impatiently on her wine glass, not even looking up as she delivered the blow that had become so routine it barely stung anymore. This reunion was for people who actually did something with their lives. I had no title, no accomplishments, no seat at the long table where the real family sat, just Riley Evans, clutching my worn tote bag filled with scribbled notebooks and resumes that still hadn't gotten a single response. I hadn't planned to come. Grandpa insisted. Family should be together, he'd said. But standing there under 100 judging eyes, I wondered if I'd made a mistake. There's space near the bar. My mother smirked without turning to face me. Might suit you better. I blinked, swallowed the lump in my throat, and nodded silently. Back row it was. As I walked through the shimmering banquet hall under crystal chandeliers, laughter followed me, sharp, cold, like ice against skin. I passed Aunt Heather laughing with her husband about some vacation house they bought just to store wine, and Cousin Ava whispering behind her hand. They giggled when I passed, probably about my thrift store shoes. Hey, Riley, Uncle Todd called out with a grin that never reached his eyes. How's that job search going? Still unemployed, or did Starbucks finally call back? The table erupted in low snickers. I kept walking, hands shaking slightly as I pulled out a creaky chair in the far corner of the hall away from the music, the buffet, the fake hugs that felt more like traps. And that's when Grandpa appeared. He'd arrived late, as always. The best ones walk in last, he used to say. But tonight his steps were quicker, more intentional. His wrinkled suit was ironed perfectly. But something in his posture told me this wasn't just another family gathering. He didn't look at anyone, not even my mother, who started standing when she saw him but froze mid-motion when he raised one hand straight toward me, without a word. He leaned down and placed an old, yellowed envelope into my hands. It was sealed with red wax bearing a stamp I didn't recognize. Open it, Riley, he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that made the air around us thicken. Now. The music didn't stop, but everything else did. All eyes turned toward the back of the hall. Even the bartender paused mid-shake, holding a cocktail shaker suspended in air. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal, the wax crumbling between my shaking hands. Inside was a single handwritten letter. No date, no signature. Just a few lines scrolled in familiar script. She's the only one I trust with the inheritance. Not because of what she has, but because of who she is. The silence was deafening. Then came the gasps. Uncle Todd knocked over his champagne glass, the crystal shattering on the floor. Ava's fork clattered to her plate. The fake smiles slipped from painted lips. What inheritance? My mother asked slowly, her tone suddenly trembling, the color draining from her face. Grandpa didn't look at her. He looked only at me, his eyes misted but resolute. The entire trust, the properties, the stocks, the accounts, the lake house, everything your grandmother and I built, it's Riley's now. My breath stopped completely. The room spun. What? She's done nothing. Mom's voice cracked into full hysteria. She's a nobody. She doesn't deserve this. This is insane. She's done more than you ever did, Grandpa said calmly, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. She chose integrity over pretense. That's worth more than any title. I stood frozen. The letter crumpled in my hands. I had done those things, but in silence. Visiting Mom when she was sick and telling no one because it wasn't about recognition. Helping settle affairs when lawyers failed because family mattered more than credit. I never posted pictures or bragged about my small acts of kindness because they weren't performances, they were just right. I gave up my youth taking care of you, Mom shouted, stepping closer, her face twisted with rage. And this freeloader walks in here and gets everything? The envelope dropped from my numb fingers, fluttering to the floor like a broken bird. I felt hot, exposed, vulnerable, and then something sharper than the pain of their cruelty cut through me. Resolve, steel. I didn't know I possessed. I stood straighter, looked at the long table where they used to sit me with the coats, and I walked past it. Past the buffet, past the stage where they'd set up their perfect family photos, all the way to the front. I stopped beside Grandpa. Are you sure? I whispered, my voice barely audible over the stunned silence. He looked up at me, eyes misted, with unshed tears but filled with pride. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, and right then, one by one, they stood. Not my mother, not the ones who had laughed at me, but the ones who remembered. My father's old friend from the service who'd lost touch but never forgot. My elementary school teacher who'd always seen something in me. A distant cousin who once stayed with us after losing everything and who I'd helped find work without telling anyone. They stood and clapped, not loud, but real. Not for show, but from the heart. I met my mother's eyes across the room, and I didn't have to say a word. Finally, my silence said everything. You want to explain what this means, Dad? My mother finally hissed, stepping toward Grandpa. Because if this is a stunt, he turned his cane slightly, blocking her path with more authority than his aged body should have possessed. No stunts tonight, Meredith. Just the truth. Something you've avoided for far too long. You're tearing this family apart, Mom cried, her voice cracking. No, Grandpa said firmly, his voice carrying across the stunned crowd. I'm giving it back its spine. He turned to me. Tell them about the job offer. I hesitated, then nodded. I got an offer from Monroe and Grant. The law firm? Uncle Todd's head jerked up, his expression shifting. Yeah, I said, letting a small, genuine smile cross my lips for the first time that evening. I'm the writer who ghost-wrote the campaign. That got their CEO re-elected as state judge. They offered me a permanent position on the team. The silence was thunderous, heavier than the chandeliers above us. You've been working? Mom asked flatly, stunned. Freelancing? Writing? Editing? Odd jobs. I never told you because you never asked. So what? One nice deed and she gets to inherit a lifetime of wealth, Mom scoffed, trying to regain control. No, Grandpa said sharply. A lifetime of character is why she's the only one who deserves it. And that's when Ethan Monroe stepped forward from the doorway, tall, composed, with a presence that commanded respect without demanding it. Is this your boyfriend now? Mom sneered. Not yet, he said with a slight smile that made my cheeks burn. But I've been hoping. I came for Grandpa, but stayed for you. He looked around the stunned crowd, his blue eyes steady and sure. I've personally offered to help manage the transition of assets and provide legal counsel. She's not alone. I stepped forward, letter in one hand, folder in the other, facing them all. Every year, I came to these reunions thinking maybe, just maybe, someone would treat me like I belonged. And every year, you reminded me that I didn't. But now you see what you didn't want to see. The useless girl isn't just holding the future, she is the future. Behind us, chairs began moving. Not people leaving in disgust, but people standing, coming closer to me. Even the catering manager stepped forward, her professional mask slipping. Miss Evans, she said gently, when your mother pushed me earlier for being late on the wine, you were the only one who asked if I needed help. That says more than any title here. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about value, true value, human worth, the kind they'd tried to strip from me piece by piece every year. Grandpa turned to me, his weathered hand resting on my shoulder. Riley, I'm giving you full executive authority over everything. You don't just inherit wealth, you inherit control. The power to decide who belongs at this table. Are you sure? I asked, breath hitching as the weight of his words settled on my shoulders. I should have done it sooner, he said, his voice heavy with regret and pride. But I thought maybe they'd change. They didn't. You did. I turned back to the crowd, my voice growing stronger with each word. I'm not throwing anyone out. I'm not erasing names from documents. But things will change. This legacy won't be run on gossip and status. If you want a seat at the table, you'll have to earn it with humility, with service, with actual human decency. I looked at my mother, really looked at her for the first time without flinching. You always played favorites, she hissed. Always liked her more than me. Admit it. I don't play favorites, Grandpa said coldly. I just remember. And that shut her up because we all remembered. The night I walked home barefoot in the rain after they left me at a restaurant because I talked too slow. The time they laughed when I said I wanted to be a writer, saying, you need a personality before you can have a voice. The birthday where no one showed up except Grandpa with a cupcake and a card that said, I see you, kiddo. Those memories they didn't forget. They just buried them under shiny resumes, fake smiles, and matching Christmas pajamas. I handed the envelope back to Grandpa for safekeeping and walked out of the spotlight for the first time in my life, finally owning the silence that once drowned me. And behind me, I heard something new, real applause. Not polite clapping, not social obligation. Real, genuine recognition for the girl who finally found her voice in the back row.